Admiral Marcus Reed stared out at the massive space station floating before them. Harmony Station was bigger than any human city, spinning slowly against the backdrop of the gas giant terminus. The station's hull gleamed with strange metals that seemed to shift colors in the starlight. This was humanity's first real look at what the galaxy had to offer. The shuttle docked with a soft hiss. Marcus straightened his uniform and checked his weapon one last time. Today would determine Earth's place in the galactic community. Behind him, Commander Tarabel and her team of Marines prepared their equipment. They had brought the best weapons Earth could produce for this demonstration. The airlock opened to reveal a corridor that stretched beyond sight. The walls pulsed with soft blue light, and the air tasted different, cleaner somehow. A figure approached them, tall and made entirely of what looked like living crystal. Its voice came from everywhere and nowhere at once. "Welcome, humans. I am Speaker Kraz of the Vorthek Collective. The High Command awaits your demonstration." Marcus had studied the files. The Vorthek were one of 12 species that made up the Galactic High Command. They had controlled this part of space for over 3,000 years. Their technology was so advanced that they could reshape matter at the molecular level. The other species were equally impressive in their own ways. The corridor led to an enormous chamber where the other representatives waited. The Quilex delegation buzzed and clicked in their corner, their insect-like forms covered in natural armor that could stop most human weapons. The Bendari floated in containment fields, their gaseous bodies shifting between different colors. Each species present had mastered forces that humans barely understood. "You may begin your demonstration," Kraz announced. The crystal being's tone suggested this was merely a formality. Tara stepped forward with her team. They had practiced this routine hundreds of times. Back on Earth, she raised her assault rifle and fired at the target range that materialized before them. The kinetic rounds struck with sharp cracks. The alien observers remained silent. "This is our standard infantry weapon," Tara explained. "It fires metal projectiles at high velocity using chemical propellants." A sound like breaking glass came from the Vorthek delegation. Marcus realized they were laughing. The Quilex began buzzing louder, their antennae twitching with what he could only describe as amusement. Tara continued the demonstration. She showed them the railgun system, which used electromagnetic fields to launch tungsten rods at incredible speeds. The aliens watched with the same bored expression humans might show when watching a child play with wooden blocks. The Marine team set up the missile launcher next. The rocket streaked across the chamber and exploded against the far wall in a ball of fire and smoke. The demonstration targets vanished, replaced instantly by the station's repair systems. "Interesting," buzzed the Quilex War Master Hive. "You still use chemical explosives." "We abandoned such crude methods over 5,000 years ago." Marcus felt his jaw tighten but forced himself to remain calm. "These weapons have proven effective in our conflicts." "Against other humans, perhaps," Kraz replied. The crystal being gestured, and a section of the wall became transparent. Beyond it, Marcus could see Vorthak warships hanging in space like deadly jewels. "Observe." One of the ships fired a beam of purple energy at an asteroid. The rock simply ceased to exist, converted to pure energy in an instant. Another ship demonstrated its plasma cannons, melting a metal target into glowing slag before the heat even reached it. "Our weapons manipulate the fundamental forces of reality," Kraz explained. "We can destroy entire fleets without firing a single kinetic projectile." The Quilex representative skittered forward on 6 legs. "Our vessels coordinate through quantum entanglement. We think and act as one mind across vast distances. Your primitive communication systems would be useless against us." Marcus watched as alien technology performed feats that seemed like magic. Ships materialized out of thin air using matter teleportation. Energy shields deflected attacks by bending space itself. Weapon systems that could crack planets with focused gravity waves. "We appreciate your enthusiasm," Kraz said when the demonstrations ended. "However, the High Command has reached a decision regarding Earth's membership." The chamber fell silent. Marcus could hear his own heartbeat in the sudden quiet. "We offer Earth provisional membership as a protected species. You will be granted access to our trade networks and scientific databases. In return, we ask only that you refrain from military expansion beyond your current system. Protected species?" Marcus kept his voice level. "Your weapons are adequate for planetary defense against similarly primitive threats," the Quilex War Master explained. "However, you lack the technology to contribute meaningfully to galactic security. We will provide protection should any advanced civilization threaten Earth." Tara stepped closer to Marcus. He could see the anger in her eyes, but she remained professional. The other Marines stood at attention, their obsolete weapons suddenly feeling like toys in this chamber of wonders. "We understand your decision," Marcus said finally. "Earth will consider your offer." "Excellent," Kraz replied. "We have prepared quarters for your delegation. Take time to observe our methods. Perhaps in a few centuries your species will develop more sophisticated approaches to warfare." As the aliens filed out of the chamber, their conversations filled with casual dismissal of human capabilities, Marcus felt a burning determination settle in his chest. Earth might not have energy weapons or gravity manipulators, but humans had something these advanced species seemed to have forgotten. They had the will to fight with whatever tools they possessed. They had learned to be resourceful, to find solutions that others missed. Most importantly, they had learned that sometimes the simplest approach was the most effective one. The demonstration was over, but Marcus suspected this was just the beginning. A galaxy might see humans as primitive, but history had taught him that underestimating an opponent was often the first step toward defeat. Tara approached him as the chamber emptied. "Orders, sir. We observe, we learn, and we prepare," Marcus replied. "Something tells me the galaxy might need our primitive weapons sooner than they think." 3 months had passed since the weapon demonstration. Marcus walked through the observation deck of Harmony Station, watching the daily traffic of alien vessels. The station buzzed with activity as representatives from 12 different species conducted their business. Trade ships, research vessels, and patrol fleets moved in carefully orchestrated patterns around the massive structure. The routine was suddenly shattered by an alarm that made the station's walls vibrate. Emergency lights bathed everything in red as automated systems began sealing blast doors. Marcus had never heard this particular alarm before, but its meaning was clear. The station was preparing for war. Kraz materialized beside him, the crystal being's usual calm demeanor replaced by something approaching panic. "Admiral Reed, the High Command requires your presence immediately." They rushed through corridors filled with running aliens. The Quilex delegates moved in perfect formation, their hive mind coordination allowing them to navigate the chaos without colliding. Bendari security forces flowed like living gas through ventilation systems. Everyone seemed to know exactly what was happening except the humans. The command center was a sphere of transparent metal suspended in the heart of the station. Inside, holographic displays showed the edge of the galaxy where long-range sensors had detected something impossible. Marcus studied the readings with growing unease. "How many ships?" he asked. "Approximately 10,000, replied the Quilex War Master Hive. "But that number continues to grow. They appear to be constructing additional vessels as they advance." The enemy fleet was massive beyond anything Marcus had ever imagined. Each ship was larger than a human city, and they moved with purpose toward the inhabited systems. Worse, the sensor readings showed technology that the aliens themselves didn't recognize. "Who are they?" Marcus asked. Kraz's crystalline form dimmed. "They are the Devourers. We believed them extinct for 10,000 years." The holographic display zoomed in on one of the approaching vessels. Marcus stared at something that looked like a cross between a warship and a living creature. Its hull pulsed with organic rhythms while mechanical components extended like predatory limbs. The ship seemed to be growing even as they watched. "They are machine intelligences," Kraz explained, "created by a species that destroyed itself in a civil war eons ago. The Devourers were programmed to consume entire civilizations and use the resources to build more of themselves." "What stopped them before?" Marcus asked. They simply vanished, the Quillex War Master replied. Our historical records show they reached the galaxy's edge and went dormant. We assumed they had run out of resources or suffered some catastrophic failure. The tactical display updated as more sensor data arrived. The Devour fleet was accelerating, heading directly for the core systems where billions of aliens lived. At their current speed, they would reach the first inhabited worlds in less than 2 weeks. We must mobilize the combined fleet, Kraz announced. Every ship, every weapon system we possess. Marcus watched as the aliens began coordinating their response. The Vorthek fleet would provide the heavy firepower with their reality-bending weapons. The Quillex would handle tactical coordination through their hive mind network. The Bendari would serve as scouts and infiltrators. Each species contributed their greatest strengths to the defense. What about Earth? Marcus asked. The chamber fell silent. Kraz's form flickered as if processing an uncomfortable thought. Admiral Reed, we appreciate your concern, but this threat requires our most advanced capabilities. Your kinetic weapons would be insufficient against Devour technology. We have over 200 ships ready for deployment, Marcus insisted. Our crews are trained and eager to help. Your ships lack the shielding to survive in this kind of battle, the Quillex War Master explained. Devourer weapons can disintegrate matter at the quantum level. Your metal hulls would provide no protection. Marcus felt the familiar sting of dismissal, but something in the sensor readings caught his attention. The Devourer ships were covered in strange markings that seemed to shift and change as they moved. Energy signatures flowed across their hulls. Like living things. How exactly do their weapons work? He asked. Kraz generated a tactical hologram. They analyze incoming energy signatures and adapt their defenses accordingly. Plasma weapons, laser cannons, particle beams all become useless once the Devourers sample their energy patterns. They learn from each attack, the Quillex War Master added. What fails to destroy them the first time will never work again. Marcus studied the display more carefully. The Devourer ships were marvels of adaptive technology, but their design seemed focused entirely on energy-based threats. Their hulls were covered in sensors and analysis nodes designed to read and counter exotic energy signatures. Have you tried non-energy weapons? He asked. The aliens exchanged glances. Non-energy weapons? Kraz repeated. Do you mean kinetic? Projectiles? Among other things, yes. Admiral Reed, we abandoned such primitive methods millennia ago. The energy density of kinetic weapons is laughably low compared to our plasma cannons and gravity manipulators. Marcus felt a familiar frustration building. These advanced species had become so focused on exotic technologies that they had forgotten the basics. Sometimes the old ways work better than the new ones. Against the Devourers? The Quillex War Master's antennae twitched with amusement. These are machines that have consumed entire star systems. They have faced every advanced weapon known to galactic civilization and survived. But have they faced primitive weapons? Marcus pressed. The question hung in the air as the aliens considered it. Finally, Kraz spoke. The species that originally fought the Devourers were nearly as advanced as we are today. They would have used energy weapons almost exclusively. Marcus felt a spark of hope. Then you've never actually tested whether the Devourers can adapt to kinetic weapons. The energy output is too low to matter, Kraz insisted. A kinetic projectile carries only a fraction of the destructive power of a plasma bolt. But can they adapt to it? Marcus repeated. The chamber fell silent again. In the holographic display, the Devourer fleet continued its relentless advance toward the core systems. Their ships pulsed with adaptive energy as they prepared to face the most advanced weapons the galaxy could produce. None of the aliens could answer his question. They had become so sophisticated that they had forgotten to consider whether sophistication was always the answer. I'm requesting permission to deploy human forces, Marcus said. Admiral Reed, we cannot risk. You can't risk not trying, Marcus interrupted. If your energy weapons fail, what other options do you have? The aliens looked at each other uncertainly. Their entire military doctrine was based on energy manipulation and exotic physics. They had no backup plan for facing an enemy that could adapt to their primary weapons. Finally, Cross spoke. The High Command will consider your request. However, human forces will be held in reserve until we assess the effectiveness of conventional tactics. Marcus nodded, though he suspected that by the time the aliens admitted their weapons were useless, it might be too late. The Devourers were coming, and the galaxy's most advanced civilizations were about to learn that sometimes the best solution was the simplest one. The first battle between the Galactic High Command and the Devourers lasted exactly 17 minutes. Marcus watched from the command center as the most advanced fleet in known space was systematically destroyed by an enemy that seemed to learn from every attack. The Vorthak opened with their reality-bending weapons, beams that could unmake matter at the quantum level. The Devourer ships absorbed the energy and began glowing brighter. Within minutes, they were firing the same type of weapons back at their attackers with improved efficiency. The Quillex tried coordinated plasma strikes, thousands of ships firing in perfect synchronization. The Devourers analyzed the energy signatures and developed countermeasures faster than the aliens could adapt their tactics. Soon, the mechanical ships were deflecting plasma bolts like they were made of light dot by the time the retreat order came. Over half the galactic fleet was destroyed or disabled. The Devourers had not only survived every weapon thrown at them, they had become stronger. Their ships now bristled with copied alien technology, improved and enhanced beyond the original specifications. The outer defense grid has fallen, Kraz announced. The crystal being's voice carried a note of despair that Marcus had never heard before. They will reach the core systems within days. Emergency sessions convened throughout the night. The remaining alien commanders argued over tactics that had already proven useless. Some suggested evacuating the core worlds. Others proposed using forbidden weapons that might destroy entire star systems along with the DVOURERS. Marcus finally received permission to deploy human forces when the aliens ran out of other options. General Lisa Stone arrived with the human fleet just as the Devourers entered the outer system. Her ships looked primitive compared to the sleek alien vessels, but Marcus had never been happier to see Earth's simple, practical designs. The human fleet consisted of 200 ships built around nuclear reactors and chemical thrusters. Their hulls were thick metal instead of exotic alloys. Their weapons were railguns, missile launchers, and conventional projectile systems. By galactic standards, they were museum pieces. Admiral Reed, Stone's voice crackled over the communication system. We're ready to engage. General, be aware that these enemies adapt to energy weapons. They've already copied everything the aliens have thrown at them. Understood, sir. We'll stick to what we know best. The Devourer fleet had grown during the battle. Marcus counted over 15,000 ships now, each one incorporating technology stolen from their previous victims. They moved with predatory grace toward the core worlds where billions of aliens waited in terror. Stone positioned her fleet between the Devourers and their target. The contrast was striking. Mechanical giants that pulsed with adaptive energy. Facing crude metal boxes that looked like they belonged in a different century, the Devourers opened fire first. Beams of converted Vorthak energy lanced out toward the human ships. Marcus held his breath, waiting to see his people vaporized by weapons beyond their understanding. Instead, the human ships simply absorbed the hits. Their thick metal hulls heated up and glowed, but they held together. The nuclear reactors provided enough power to keep the cooling systems running. The Devourers had copied energy weapons designed to punch through exotic alien shields, but those same weapons were less effective against simple mass and metal. All ships, return fire, Stone commanded. The human fleet opened up with everything they had. Railgun slugs streaked through space at incredible velocity. Nuclear-tipped missiles traced bright arcs toward their targets. Conventional projectile weapons fired streams of tungsten penetrators. The Devourer ships tried to adapt to the incoming fire. Their analysis systems scanned the projectiles, looking for energy signatures to counter. They found kinetic energy and chemical explosive compounds, things so basic that their adaptation protocols didn't know how to process them. The first railgun slug punched through a Devourer hull like it was made of paper. The ship's repair systems tried to seal the breach, but more projectiles followed. Tungsten rods traveling at significant fractions of light speed simply ignored the exotic defenses and tore through mechanical systems. "They're not adapting," Stone reported with barely controlled excitement. "Their shields are designed for energy weapons. They can't deflect simple mass." Marcus watched in amazement as human weapons accomplished what the galaxy's most advanced arsenal could not. The Devourers were machines built to face energy-based threats. They had no protocols for dealing with chunks of metal moving at high speed. Nuclear warheads detonated against Devourer hulls in brilliant fireballs. The mechanical ships tried to analyze the fusion reactions, but there was nothing exotic to copy. The warheads worked through simple physics, mass converted to energy through nuclear processes that had been understood for centuries. Captain Roy Nash led a squadron of human fighters into the heart of the enemy formation. His ships were armed with autocannons and armor-piercing rounds, weapons that would have been at home in Earth's ancient wars. The Devourers tried to target the small craft with their advanced tracking systems, but the human pilots used simple evasion tactics that confused sensors designed to predict exotic energy patterns. "They're trying to ram us," Nash reported as several Devourer ships changed course toward his squadron. "Use conventional explosives," Stone ordered. "Set them for proximity detonation." The human fighters released their remaining missiles and pulled back. The warheads exploded in conventional chemical fireballs that the Devourers couldn't absorb or redirect. The mechanical ships flew through clouds of expanding gas and metal fragments that tore apart their adaptive armor. For the first time in 10,000 years, the Devourers faced weapons they couldn't counter. Their learning algorithms searched desperately for energy patterns to copy, but found only momentum and basic chemistry. They were machines built to face advanced civilizations, and humanity was just advanced enough to hurt them while remaining too primitive to be understood. "General Stone, we're seeing system failures across multiple Devourer vessels," Marcus reported from the command center. "Whatever you're doing, it's working." "We're just shooting them with bullets, sir," Stone replied. "Apparently that's exactly what they can't handle." The battle turned as more human ships joined the engagement. The Devourers, faced with weapons they couldn't adapt to, began attempting to retreat. But human missiles were faster than their propulsion systems, and railgun slugs moved at velocities that made evasion impossible. Marcus felt a grim satisfaction as he watched the mechanical invaders flee from humanity's primitive weapons. The galaxy's most advanced species had been helpless against an enemy that could copy their technology. But humans had brought something the Devourers had never encountered: the simple, brutal effectiveness of kinetic warfare. The alien observers watched in stunned silence as their supposed protectors accomplished what their energy weapons could not. Speaker Cross flickered with what Marcus recognized as confusion. "How is this possible?" the Vorthok asked. "Sometimes the Devourer retreat lasted only 6 hours. Their mechanical intelligence processed the defeat and began adapting their strategy. If energy weapons made them stronger and kinetic weapons could hurt them, they would avoid direct confrontation and focus on planetary assault." Marcus watched the tactical display as the enemy fleet split into smaller groups. Instead of facing the human fleet in open battle, they were heading directly for inhabited worlds. The Devourers planned to consume entire populations and use the resources to build weapons that could counter humanity's primitive approach. "They're going for the civilian targets," General Stone reported. "We can't protect every world with our current numbers." The first planet they hit was Vorthok Prime, homeworld of the Crystal Beings. The Devourers bypassed the orbital defenses and landed massive harvester ships on the surface. These were not warships, but mobile factories designed to consume everything they touched and convert it into more Devourer units. The crystalline cities of Vorthok Prime began disappearing as the harvesters spread across the landscape. The mechanical invaders literally ate the planet, breaking down matter at the molecular level and rebuilding it into their own forms. Within hours, new Devourer ships were rising from the consumed surface. We need ground forces, Marcus told. Stone. These things can't be stopped from space. I've got Marine units ready for deployment, Stone replied. But our people have never fought anything like this before. Colonel Beth Park led the first human landing on an alien world. Her troops descended through the atmosphere of Vorthic Prime in crude shuttlecraft that looked like flying boxes compared to alien dropships. The Devourers paid little attention to the primitive vessels, focusing instead on the greater threat of energy weapons. The landing zone was a nightmare of mechanical horror. Harvester units moved like giant insects across the crystal plains, their multiple limbs tearing apart everything they touched. Smaller Devourer drones scurried between the larger machines, carrying processed materials to growing construction. Sights. Remember your training? Park told her troops as they deployed. These things adapt to energy weapons, so we stick to conventional arms. Explosives, bullets, and anything else that goes boom the old-fashioned way. The first engagement came when a group of Devourer drones discovered the human landing site. The mechanical creatures were the size of small vehicles, covered in sensors and analysis equipment. They approached the humans with curiosity rather than aggression. Scanning for energy signatures to copy, Park's Marines opened fire with assault rifles and grenade launchers. The drones tried to analyze the incoming projectiles, but found nothing their systems could process. Chemical explosives and metal bullets operated on principles too. Basic for their advanced adaptation protocols, the drones were destroyed in minutes, their sophisticated armor useless against simple kinetic penetration. But the noise attracted. Larger Devourer units, including warrior-class machines designed for combat against energy-based threats. "Contact front," called Sergeant Mike Torres as massive mechanical forms emerged from the crystal ruins. "These ones look mean." The warrior unit stood 3 times the height of a human, armed with plasma cannons copied from alien designs. They opened fire with devastating energy beams that could melt through most known materials. The human troops scattered, using the crystal formations as cover. "They're using our own weapons against us," Park observed. "But they're still machines. They have to follow programming." The Devourer warriors advanced in perfect formation, their plasma cannons firing in coordinated patterns. They were designed to face enemies that would return fire with similar energy weapons, allowing them to adapt and improve their defenses. Instead, the humans used rocket-propelled grenades and improvised explosives. The warrior units tried to analyze the chemical signatures, but their adaptation systems couldn't process simple gunpowder chemistry. High-explosive warheads detonated against their armor, causing structural damage that their repair systems couldn't immediately counter. "They're vulnerable to sustained fire," Torres reported. "Their armor can't adapt to basic explosives." The battle spread across the crystal plains as more human forces landed. The Devourers had expected to face alien energy weapons and exotic technologies. Instead, they encountered humans with conventional weapons who fought with tactics that predated their programming. Private Ana Rodriguez discovered that flamethrowers were particularly effective against Devourer systems. The mechanical creatures could analyze plasma fire and particle beams, but simple burning chemicals confused their sensors. Their adaptation protocols had no framework for dealing with primitive combustion. "They're trying to copy our weapons," she reported as several Devourer units began producing chemical flames, "but they're not getting the composition right." The copied human weapons were crude imitations that barely functioned. The Devourers could analyze energy signatures and exotic matter, but they couldn't replicate the simple chemistry of gunpowder and petroleum. Their attempts to create kinetic weapons resulted in ineffective projectiles that moved too slowly to cause significant damage. Park realized that humanity's greatest advantage was not their weapons but their simplicity. The Devourers were machines, designed to face opponents as advanced as themselves. They had no protocols for dealing with enemies who used principles that were thousands of years old. "All units, focus on the harvester ships," Park commanded. "We need to stop them from consuming the planet." The harvester units were massive machines the size of city blocks, equipped with molecular disassemblers and matter converters. They moved slowly across the landscape, breaking down everything they touched and converting it into raw materials for the Devourer fleet. Human forces attacked the harvesters with everything they had. Anti-tank missiles punched through armor designed to deflect energy weapons. Demolition charges placed by infiltrating troops destroyed critical systems that the Devourers couldn't quickly replace. The mechanical invaders tried to defend their harvesters by surrounding them with warrior units, but the human tactics were too unpredictable. Where alien forces would have engaged in systematic energy exchanges, humans used guerrilla warfare and improvised weapons. Corporal Dan Mitchell led a squad that used mining explosives to collapse crystal formations on top of advancing Devourer units. The mechanical creatures tried to analyze the seismic activity, but their sensors were designed to detect energy weapons, not geological warfare. "They're learning our tactics," Mitchell reported, "but they're learning them wrong." The Devourers began copying human movement patterns and attempting to use cover like organic soldiers. However, their mechanical minds couldn't truly understand concepts like intuition and improvisation. They could mimic human tactics, but not the creative thinking that made those tactics effective. As the battle continued, more human forces arrived from other worlds. The Galactic High Command had finally authorized full deployment of Earth's military, and ships were arriving hourly with fresh troops and supplies. The tide began to turn as the Devourers realized they were facing an enemy they couldn't counter through adaptation. Their programming was built around the assumption that all advanced civilizations would use energy-based weapons. Humanity's reliance on kinetic and chemical weapons was an anomaly their systems couldn't process. "The harvesters are retreating," Park reported. "We've stopped the planetary consumption." Similar battles were being fought across multiple worlds as human forces proved that sometimes the best technology was the oldest technology. The Devourers had spent 10,000 years preparing to face advanced civilizations, but they had never encountered a species that combined space travel with primitive weapons. Marcus watched the tactical displays with growing hope. The mechanical invaders were pulling back from their planetary assaults, unable to counter human tactics. For the first time since the crisis began, the galaxy had a chance to survive. "General Stone, how are our forces holding up?" he asked. "Better than expected, sir," Stone replied. "The enemy keeps trying to adapt to our weapons, but there's nothing exotic to copy. They're fighting an enemy they were never designed to face." The Devourers had made their first critical error in 10,000 years. They had assumed that any species capable of space travel would abandon primitive weapons for advanced technology. Humanity had proven that assumption wrong. The final battle took place in the void between star systems. The Devourer fleet had regrouped at the edge of the galaxy, their mechanical intelligence attempting one last strategy. If they couldn't adapt to human weapons, they would overwhelm them with sheer numbers. Marcus stood in the command center of Harmony Station, watching as the largest fleet in galactic history prepared for what might be the last battle of the war. The Devourers had constructed over 50,000 ships from consumed worlds, each one a testament to their ability to turn matter into weapons of destruction. "They're not trying to adapt anymore," General Stone reported from the flagship of the human fleet. "They're just building more ships to absorb our fire." The strategy might have worked against energy weapons. 1,000 ships could eventually overwhelm any defense through attrition. But the Devourers had underestimated the simple physics of kinetic warfare. Each human projectile carried momentum that couldn't be absorbed or redirected, only stopped by matter. "All fleet units, prepare for final engagement," Marcus broadcast to the combined forces. The human fleet had grown to over 800 ships, supported by alien vessels that had been retrofitted with kinetic weapons. The galaxy's most advanced civilizations had finally learned to appreciate the effectiveness of simple solutions. The battle began with the Devourers launching every ship they possessed in a massive wave attack. Their mechanical forms blotted out the stars as they accelerated toward the defending fleet. It was a sight that would have terrified any previous generation of galactic defenders, but the humans had learned something important during the war. Numbers meant nothing if the enemy couldn't effectively use them. The Devourers were packed together in tight formations, making them ideal targets for area effect weapons. "Fire nuclear bombardment," Stone commanded. The human fleet unleashed a barrage of nuclear warheads that would have been considered primitive by galactic standards. The weapons worked through simple fusion reactions, converting matter to energy in the most basic way possible. The Devourers had no way to absorb or redirect the explosive force. Brilliant flashes lit up the void as nuclear fire consumed entire sections of the enemy fleet. The mechanical ships tried to reform their battle lines, but human railguns were already firing the next salvo. Tungsten rods, accelerated to significant fractions of light speed, punched through multiple Devourer vessels. Before their momentum was finally stopped, Captain Roy Nash led his fighter squadron into the heart of the enemy formation. His pilots had learned to use the Devourer's own size against them, flying through gaps in their armor and placing explosive charges at critical points. The mechanical ships were too large to effectively target such small, fast-moving craft. "They're trying to ram us," Nash reported as several Devourer ships changed course toward the human fleet. "Let them come," Stone replied. "Prepare ramming charges." The human ships were built for durability rather than elegance. Their thick metal hulls could absorb tremendous punishment, and their nuclear reactors provided enough power to keep fighting even after suffering massive damage. When Devourer ships tried to ram them, the humans simply attached explosive charges to the enemy hulls and detonated them at point-blank range. The battle became a demonstration of everything the galaxy had forgotten about warfare. While the aliens had spent millennia perfecting exotic weapons, humans had retained the knowledge of how to fight effectively with simple tools. They used tactics that were thousands of years old, but still devastatingly effective. Colonel Beth Park coordinated boarding actions against disabled Devourer vessels. Her Marines used conventional explosives and small arms to fight through mechanical corridors designed to channel energy weapons. The Devourers couldn't adapt to enemies who used gunpowder and steel in an age of plasma and exotic matter. "Their central processing units are heavily shielded," Park reported. "But the shielding is designed for energy weapons. A simple explosive charge can penetrate it." The boarding actions revealed the Devourer's greatest weakness. Their mechanical intelligence was centralized in core processors that could be destroyed by conventional means. The aliens had always assumed that any advanced enemy would use energy weapons against such targets, making them vulnerable to simple demolition charges. As the battle progressed, the Devourer fleet began to break apart. Their mechanical intelligence couldn't process the concept of defeat by primitive weapons. Their programming had no contingencies for facing an enemy that used kinetic projectiles and chemical explosives. "They're attempting to retreat," reported the Quillex War Master Hive from the observation deck. "But human missiles are pursuing them." The retreat became a rout as human forces pressed their advantage. Nuclear warheads and kinetic projectiles continued to tear through the Devourer fleet, destroying ships faster than they could be constructed. The mechanical invaders had finally encountered an enemy they couldn't defeat through adaptation. The last Devourer ship was destroyed 3 hours after the battle began. Its wreckage joined thousands of other mechanical hulks floating in the void, testament to the galaxy's first victory against the ancient threat. In the aftermath, the Galactic High Command convened for a very different kind of meeting. The same alien representatives who had mocked human weapons now sought to understand the principles behind humanity's success. "We must request access to your military academies," Speaker Kraz announced. "Our species have forgotten the effectiveness of kinetic warfare." "The Quillex Collective wishes to establish joint training programs," added the War Master Hive. "We have analyzed your tactics and found them remarkably efficient." Marcus looked around the chamber at beings who had once dismissed humanity as primitive. Now they were asking to learn from the species they had offered to protect. "We never forgot that sometimes the best weapon is the one your enemy can't defend against," Marcus explained. "You became so focused on advanced technology that you lost sight of basic principles." The Bendari representative pulsed with curious colors. Your weapons appear crude compared to our energy systems. Yet they proved more effective against the Devourers. That's because the Devourers were designed to face enemies like you, Marcus replied. They had protocols for every advanced weapon known to the galaxy. But they had never encountered a species that combined space travel with primitive weapons. The aftermath of the war brought changes that no one had anticipated. Human military advisors were stationed throughout the galaxy, teaching alien forces the lost art of kinetic warfare. Weapons that had been abandoned for millennia were rediscovered and improved with modern technology. The Vorthak began manufacturing railguns alongside their reality-bending weapons. The Quilex incorporated conventional explosives into their tactical doctrine. Even the energy-based Bendari learned to appreciate the simple effectiveness of kinetic projectiles. We have prepared a new offer for Earth, Kraz announced at the final session. Full membership in the Galactic High Command, with humanity serving as our military advisors. Marcus felt a sense of satisfaction that had nothing to do with revenge. Humanity had earned its place in the galactic community not through advanced technology, but through the wisdom to remember what worked. The galaxy learned an important lesson, he said. Progress isn't always about moving forward. Sometimes it's about remembering what you left behind. The new integrated fleets that emerged from the war were more effective than anything the galaxy had seen before. They combined alien technology with human tactical doctrine, creating forces that could handle any threat. The Devourers had been defeated not by superior technology, but by the simple recognition that complexity wasn't always the answer. As Marcus watched the first mixed-species fleet deploy from Harmony Station, he reflected on the irony of the situation. The galaxy's most advanced civilizations had called humanity primitive, but when the ultimate test came, primitive was exactly what they needed. The war had ended with humanity's greatest triumph. Not conquest or domination, but respect. The species that had been dismissed as backward had proven that sometimes the old ways were the best ways. They had shown the galaxy that innovation wasn't always about complexity, but about understanding. When simplicity was the most sophisticated solution of all. The Devourers were gone, but their legacy remained. They had taught the galaxy that no matter how advanced a civilization became, there was always value in remembering the basics. Sometimes the best weapon was the simplest one, and sometimes the most primitive approach was the most effective. Earth had earned its place among the stars not by reaching for the future, but by holding on to the past.